move on if there's actions in their area. But like you are a hub for people and activism, and much appreciated. So how are you doing today after that long-winded, legendary activist kind of introduction? How are you doing today, Jess?
Hi, Scott. It's so nice to be here. I love seeing all the comments. Really good to be here. Thanks for having me. And actually, not so bad today. I've been, obviously it's been a completely insane news, month, year, decade. But this weekend has been really wild, right? And today, uh, the Tesla protests all over the country.
Yep.
There's been some incredibly heartening stuff. I don't know, the choir singing the song from Les Mis in front of Trump. I don't know if that was intentional or not. That was great. So many people raising their voices, which I find really encouraging. And then on the other hand, we have, Trump turning against basically NATO, and we had the horrible incident in Idaho this weekend, which I don't know if you saw the video of this woman being lifted out bodily from a Republican. It wasn't a town hall. It wasn't a political town hall. It was like a Republican Central Committee town hall. But there's as MAGA rises, the resistance is rising, and that's the thing. So like the MAGA rising is really upsetting, and seeing it is really sobering. But also watching people find ways to fight back is incredibly inspiring. And so I choose to focus on my people, as I just said to my husband over a very quick lunch. I was like, I believe in my people. Have full faith that Americans are not going to tolerate this. We might have been a little slow to rouse ourselves, I think, because mostly we were just in shock.
Mhm.
But I like what I'm seeing. I like the fight that I'm seeing right now, and I expect to see a lot more of it. So, you can't be happy under these circumstances because too many people are suffering.
Right.
But I am glad to see. I am really glad to see the opposition rising.
Yeah, as am I. Just for anybody who's not aware, um, right now we're in the belly of the beast. I never left Twitter, and I didn't want to leave the million followers behind, but also I wanted to make sure that we don't let them just take it over as a right wing. And some people say, oh well, you should get out of there. I really want to make sure that we reach people, because there are real people. Not everybody's a bot there. And there are people who have changed, that said they voted for Trump. I don't know who's real and who's not, but they've changed their mind. They didn't know it would be this scary. So we're running a hashtag Don't Cut Our Medicaid campaign, which is trending number 9 on Twitter/X. So if you still use it, please go online, contribute to the effort, tell your story, add a link to your post. To my post today, add a link to your post in my post today in the comments, or send me a message with it, and so I can amplify it as well. Tomorrow, I know you wanted to talk about this. I want to talk about this first. There's a budget resolution vote, as you had said. Can you tell us about what's going on tomorrow?
Yeah. So tomorrow, and I'll encapsulate this as quickly as I can. So tomorrow, the House Republicans are going to be voting on their version of a budget resolution. So there's basically two competing versions. There's one in the Senate and one in the House. Trump has endorsed the House's version. So it is one enormous bill that basically has everything in it Trump wants this term. And a big part of that is gigantic tax cuts, $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. They want to pay for that by basically raising the debt ceiling, borrowing a bunch more money. So it will blow up our deficit. But more importantly, they want to slash basically the big number that everyone's talking about is $880 billion off of Medicaid, which is going to rip God knows how many people off of Medicaid. It will also mean cuts in SNAP, dramatic cuts in SNAP, which I think about 40 million people in the country, mostly impoverished women and children, rely on for food, nutritional assistance. Your student education, if you have student loans, your payments are going to go up if this budget goes through. And if you are one of the people who gets your ACA and has subsidies that pay for part of your premiums, those would go away as well. And the only thing that gets more money is mass deportations, which of course feeds into Trump's connections to the private prison industry and all that stuff. There's a great deal of corruption woven into all of this, of course. But the most dire thing is that what they are literally, and this is just the simple truth, is that they are robbing from the poor to give to the rich.
Mhm.
Everything they're doing is in order to cut spending on American citizens to give more money to people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Betsy DeVos, name, the billionaire you hate. There's about 87 of them in our country right now. They're the ones who will benefit the most. So I was just on a call. 88% of the tax benefits in this bill will go to not just the richest 1%, but the richest 1%. It's like it is it would be farcical if it weren't so cruel. So that is what they're voting on tomorrow. And the good news is, this is the last thing I'll say about this. I was just on a call with a Congress member, and I've been on a few calls about this morning, is that our pressure is working. We already have one solid no vote from Victoria Spartz, who is a Republican, and a lot more Republicans who are saying they cannot vote for this bill because people have been banging on their doors and showing up at their town halls and yelling at them. And so they're like, I don't think I can do it. But Mike Johnson is saying, we're going to get them all on board. He literally said today, we're going to pray through it and we're going to get them all on board because, Christianity is all about taking food away from babies. So anyway, that's where we are right now. So it is us against, the Christian nationalists. So our job is to keep calling and keep calling, like their phones should be blowing up today. Every
Right.
single member of Congress, don't you dare vote for cuts to Medicaid so that Elon Musk can get more tax cuts. That's the script,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely, and I hated to warn people about this when they started talking about, oh, there's undocumented immigrants that are in these systems, and I'm like, oh, that's how they're going to use it as leverage. They're going to use racism as a cover. They're going to use these fake stories about 100 to 150-year-old people who are possibly getting checks, or I think they actually said that they are getting checks.
No, that
So
was that was debunked. Just so you know,
yeah,
debunked. That was not true.
exactly. Right. And false flag. But they so I do excuse me, I do letters to members of Congress to from constituents. It's shared on social media with the title of what it is, don't cut Medicaid or whatever it is. And then people get a follow-up email after they send their letters that says make phone calls. But one of the things people ask me, and I've worked on the Hill, lived on the Hill area for over 15 years, and it is, and I interned in an office years ago, 2003 in North Carolina. Um, it was back then. It was more faxes and phone calls, but it was amazing to see. It's been amazing to see the pickup of just how many people are actually contacting. If you could give just it's really important, I think, for a lot of people on here. How important is contact to your member of Congress, your senators? Like, how important is that on issues? Because some people say they don't listen to me. I've tried, I've left voicemails, or their voicemail is full, and I keep on saying, keep trying, keep trying. Better than most about this. Like, what do you think? What do you tell people who might be naysayers about it?
I mean, it's unbelievably important. I mean, here's what I say to people who are like, "Well, the one I get all the time is Ted Cruz. He is the example people use all the time. My senator is Ted Cruz. There's no point in calling him." Here's the thing. Let's say you have got somebody who's representing you who is the worst version of a congressional representative. You're Ted Cruz or you're Marjorie Taylor Greene. They are awful. Will they be more awful if they are not hearing a word from anybody in their district challenging them to do better? Yeah, they will. They are as really bad right now, but they are still practicing some forms of restraint. Are they going to stop doing that if we just absolutely walk away from this process? Yeah, absolutely. We have no idea you can't prove a negative, right? But you don't know what you're stopping them from doing when you call and leave these messages. And also, you guys, these people work for you. You're the boss. Are you just going to let you have a terrible employee? Are you just going to keep paying them and leave them in a room and not go in there every once in a while and say, "What are you doing?" You know? Yeah, they may be tenured, they may be hard to get out of your job, but you're still going to say to them, "This is what you're supposed to be doing." Never stop calling. And for the good ones, people say, "Oh, mine is Elizabeth Warren. I don't need to call her." Yeah, you do, because the good ones are taking unbelievable heat and they are getting they're probably getting death threats. They need to be called and thanked. And let me tell you, AOC did this great Instagram story that I actually posted on my Instagram feed. You can go watch it as a continuous video. It's got like 2 million views at this point because people were so into her explanation of why it is important to call. And one of the things she says is, she's like, I'm in a very blue district, but of course I have Trump supporters in my district. And she said, we get more calls from them by a factor of 8 than we do from blue voters. And they know that I'm never going to vote their way. They call anyway. Republicans outcall Democrats by literally about 8 to 1. They always call. Why do you think it's so hard to pass good gun legislation? Because the gun people call. They probably call 4 times a day every day. They are relentless. We need to be relentless. We need to be the voices that are blowing up their phones, and we need to do it. AOC was not talking about during this time. She was talking about when Biden was president.
Mhm.
All the time. We need to be blowing up their phones. And this is also the last thing I'll say. This is an act of self esteem for you. If you want to feel more powerful, that comes from taking powerful actions. Calling your representatives is one of the most powerful actions you can take. It says, my voice matters. You do it. And right now, absolutely, those Republican representatives are listening. They are freaking out at how many people are calling them and how angry people are, because it doesn't matter your party. We all know somebody who's relying on Medicaid. Half of everybody in a nursing home is on Medicaid. 4 out of 10 births in the United States are covered by Medicaid. Half of the children in the United States, many, many veterans are on Medicaid. So this is not a partisan thing. This is all Americans against the billionaires who want their tax cuts. So call. Okay, my rant is over, but that was my answer.
This is why I brought you on. It's amazing. So you say relentless, and I've always thought the winnings are so important in regards to, I've worked in campaign politics for years. I've worked in some red districts and won some uh, things that people were like, "You're never, that's impossible," and we won it. And then I've been in races where polls say we're up 15 points, and it's a blue house district, and we lose by 2. And so I've seen it come both ways. We all worked hard on Doug Jones. We all worked hard on Warnock and Ossoff. I mean, right after that election, and it was during COVID. I remember being like, "Oh wait, now we've got to do this." And I think that was what, on January 5th, so the day before that nightmare. But
Mhm.
we've had these impossible things that we've been able to pull off. I know that they're really, really red seats, these special House elections, but Jasmine Crockett said something wonderful about this is like, shouldn't we at least try?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we at least try? So, what do you think about the special elections coming up?
Well, first of all, we just flipped a seat in Iowa a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't a congressional seat, it
Mhm.
was a state level seat, but we flipped it in a district that Trump had won by 21 points, and we flipped that seat from red to blue. And I
Yeah,
read about the guy who campaigned. He went out and he knocked doors, he talked to people, he talked about the economy, he was from the district, he was a great candidate, and he won. Um, I think that under normal circumstances, if let's we had Kamala Harris in office right now and like maybe a Democratic Senate, I probably would be like, you guys, like these we're probably gonna lose. But that is not the situation we're in. We
right,
are under attack. Like
right,
we're in the middle of a coup. And anybody who denies that is just fully has drunk the Kool-Aid, right? So I think that we stand a chance. I think that no one who works in politics is gonna be like, oh yeah, we can do that. I mean, it's a stretch. Matt Gates's district is, I think, and you can correct me, Scott, the most Republican district in the country, right? It's went for
it's
Trump
one of
by
yeah.
it's up there. Went for Trump, I think, by 30
They
points.
voted after even the allegations. They voted for him plus
Yeah.
35 or something. Yeah,
Right. But listen,
yeah,
here's the thing. It's first of all, special elections, as somebody said to me, create special circumstances. They can be extremely low turnout. The people who are
right,
going to be motivated to vote in this election, I guarantee you are not Trump voters. Like, no one's going to be motivated to vote in a special election right now unless they have got a bone to pick. And the bone that people have to pick right now is with Trump and Musk and the, co-kings in the Oval Office. So I absolutely we should try. Plus, what else are we doing? Like, what else do we have to
right,
do?
right.
Watch more Netflix? I mean, we can do both. We can watch Netflix and still do
It's
this.
okay right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
okay. It's so.
yeah.
We're,
There's
we're
not that
gonna
much
have
on.
to. We're gonna have to win in places. And I remember, you remember in 20. Of course, you remember this, but 2010. Uh, I was I was working with some people who even though I pushed for that healthcare law, there were Democrats who pushed against it, and they were one of the few ones who held their House seats, sadly enough, in competitive districts.
Right.
Um, I see that same kind of outrage that they had that one kind of message of like, you're going to take our, and it's you're
Death
going to take away
panels,
my,
death panels. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, death panels, death
Hmm.
panels. I
Hmm.
mean, I'm talking about, when we are compete in this upcoming midterm election. I'm talking about not counting out anywhere. And
No.
I think there's got to be a shift in regards, not in regards to progressive values, right? You own them. Like that's the key to that, right? You own them. This is where I stand. You know this, and this is where that other guy stands, or whatnot, or the other person stands. But I think there are chances to win in places now that were impossible 2 years ago. I really truly believe that. I think there's going to be a shift, just like there usually is after a presidential election when another party wins. But I think this is going to be potentially a big blue wave. We're going to need to work in different ways, in different
Yeah.
capacities, and talk the common sense of the voters. But I mean, there's a great opportunity here, and we're going to. I can't be involved in electoral politics in the same way that I used to be, but we're going to be supporting your efforts and other people's efforts that are involved. We have another red flag that came up with a lot of people that are very concerned about it, and I've been talking to House reps about this, and they've been like, oh, they may have to rewrite it, they may have to withdraw it. The SAVE Act. Now,
Hmm.
people are like, this is voter ID. This is something that's going to be good for protecting elections. Republicans say under false pretenses, lies. So, what exactly are the dangers surrounding the SAVE Act? Because I have seen warnings from Mark Elias and other groups that I trust, that are big red flags about it, about married women who have changed their names, or people with not valid birth certificates, according to this law. What are the warnings about it, and what's going on with that? I saw you have an action surrounding that.
I do. I have an action. I have a letter, and we'll have call scripts on it too. The only reason I haven't been aggressively putting call scripts in about it is because this week they're not voting on it. They're voting on this budget, and the budget is bad. So, but
Right.
the SAVE Act basically would require you to register to vote in person. So it would get rid of online voter registration, vote mail, all those voter registration drives that I've done where you've gone and you've signed people up and then you mail in the registration. No more. Person has to go in person, and they have to bring proof of citizenship with them when they register to vote, which is mostly either a passport or a birth certificate. Birth certificate being the main one. Now, people may say, well, what's the matter with that? I mean, you should have to be a citizen to vote. You already have to be a citizen to vote. There's already a
Right.
law. It has
Right.
always been the law. And there are huge safeguards in place. And you get in a shitload of trouble if you try to do it. And that is why it is vanishingly rare. And I mean, I think I'm pretty much speaking to preaching to the choir here. But in case there's a Trump supporter or a Republican on here, you can look it up. There have been studies after studies. They've done all kinds of research. Even the people at the Heritage Project who love the SAVE Act because it's a voter suppression bill could not come up with any instances of meaningful like times when a non-citizen had voted. It's something like 0.004% of it. Like it is so rare. So it does not happen. But what this bill would do would make it harder for young people who often don't have passports or don't have birth certificates, people who have been in a natural disaster whose papers have all been destroyed, people who are poor and haven't been able to afford to replace their documents, and of course, women who have married and taken their husband's name. Now they're saying, oh, no, no, the bill makes a provision for that. The woman would have to come and she'd have to provide extra documentation. But, like, what extra documentation? The law doesn't specify. So that means that different states could kind of make up whatever they want. And
Right.
again, we are dealing with Christian nationalists, and this bill really says that very clearly. We don't want women, we don't want young people, we don't want people of color to vote. And this is a
Right.
pretty cool way of getting that to happen without actually coming out and saying that that's what we're doing. It's a
Right.
garbage bill, absolutely awful. So, yeah, so it needs to be stopped. And the good news is, I'm pretty sure Democrats, unlike the Lake and Riley Act, which some of them really screwed up on and voted for, I think the Democrats are pretty universally opposed to the SAVE Act. And so we just need to peel off some Republicans. or we'll end up filibustering it in the Senate. But it's really, really important that we have unanimous opposition from Democrats, which right now is not a guarantee. We have weird rogue actors like Gallegos, Fetterman, who are doing like what the hell, Alyssa Slotkin, like there's all kinds of senators who are doing making dumb choices. And so
Hmm.
it is our job to make sure that every single Democrat understands, and Republicans too, that the SAVE Act is abhorrent. It's a voter suppression bill. It cannot pass. And there will be hell to pay if it passes at the ballot box. I'm not threatening violence. I don't believe in violence. But that's
Sure.
my feeling.
Peaceful resistance. There are dozens of people. I just want to tell you that my producer mentioned that there's dozens of people who have said on here several things. Some of them are making calls while they're on this right now.
Yeah.
In regards to that, some of them thank you for being one of the first people to ever encourage them to contact their reps. They'd never done it before, and so they wanted to thank you for that. And then they just keep on, there's just people talking about how they're making their phone calls right now, and then there's some people who are not friends of ours also in the chat that it's zooming by too quick for me to block them. So
Hmm.
good for you, guy. But that's that's too bad. So we last time we spoke, as I said before we close out, the we had spoken in August, and the world has changed a bit. Um, how have you seen things change in the organizing world? I mean, me personally, I've seen people. I mean, that night, election night, when I finally knew, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 more, oh, I forget what time it was. I started organizing because instead of, I've always just dove right into the next thing. I'm like, okay, well, we got to fight them. Like, let's do everything we can. And, we were full speed ahead. I'm like, we got to keep on going. We got to keep, and especially when one of my BFFs, Matt Gaetz, was chosen to be the AG nominee, which I was
Mhm.
like, to hell with that. No way, man. No. And we've had public beefs, private beefs in bars.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
we don't get along. I mean, I've had friends that troll him, like Lauren Windsor, who would go and ask
Hmm.
him questions that were controversial intentionally. Um,
He's
and
abhorrent. Yeah.
he did not like, I forget what he said in response, but all I was doing was reporting on the fact that I dug up some pictures of him at Mar-a-Lago without a mask on, COVID, whatnot.
Mm.
And he said his response to it publicly on Twitter was something like, this is DeSantis, Trump, Gates land. It will always be legal to do whatever we want, or something like that in Florida. And I was like, that's good. This aged terribly, obviously. But yeah, it's we that was another reason why I was like, this is not good. Now we have Dan Bongino becoming the deputy FBI director, and
Hmm.
Kash Patel. That's somebody, whoever runs as a Democrat. If you're listening right now, if you happen to be listening right now to this interview, you're going to have to run on one of the facts that you're going to fire them. So just FYI. Okay, so anyways, what I was saying is there's all this stuff going on. Um, how have you seen things change in your world because of this nightmare? I guess.
Well, I think the most obvious change, and sorry if you're one of my subscribers and you've heard me talk about this a couple times, and I'm really not saying this to brag. This is not a brag. This is an indication of where Americans are right now. Is that I've had my newsletter since very late 2016,
Hmm.
and in the last 30 days, I have picked up 60,000 new subscribers
Right, crossed a
to
hundred,
my
right?
newsletter, which is like, I mean, it is, I think when Trump was elected the second time, I had like 40,000 subscribers. I now have like 100, almost 120. Like it
Right.
has been, and that's, again, this is not about me. It is about people who were even kind of sitting on the sidelines all through the last, like, there's been a resistance for a while, but I feel like even there's like a new, like my stepfather called Congress for the first time over this Republican Medicaid cuts. Like people who are, he does a lot of stuff, but calling Congress is not something he typically does, and he did it. People are getting that Five Calls app, which I highly recommend. Five Calls makes it so easy. I mean, my newsletter is great, but I can only cover one issue in a day for my call scripts. But they've got 15 scripts you can choose from, and they give you the phone numbers and the district office phone numbers. Um, but I see people getting off the sidelines. I see people resisting. I see unbelievable courage. I hate to say this, but particularly in women, there are some men like you and, like Chris Murphy and Maxwell Frost and who like Bernie, you know, we see the courageous men, but honestly, it is the women who are putting their fucking bodies on the line. And I heard something that was, oh, Republican lawmakers are afraid to speak up because they're afraid of physical violence. Guess who else is afraid of physical violence? Every single lawmaker on the Democrat side who is
Yeah.
speaking up. AOC, who probably gets 100 death threats a day.
Yeah.
And she is not bowed. Oh my God, the cowardice. It's unbelievable. I would
Right.
be embarrassed to look at myself in the mirror if I were one of these men on the Republican side. But anyway, I'm seeing a lot of courage. I'm seeing also, and I know we'll close with this, but like you talked about how we don't have to try to push progressive values on the other side. But here's the truth, Scott. I believe that Americans in general actually agree on way more than they disagree on. And my belief and my hope is that if we can get Americans to finally understand that the whole pitting us against each other thing is a trick by the rich to get us to not pay attention while they rob us blind. It's been going on for 60 years. And if we can finally recognize it and go, I may not like this person over here. I may have a real problem with the way that person voted in the last election, but I am going to focus right here. I am focusing on these billionaire people up here who are fucking us all, excuse my language. And if we can finally get Americans to do that, we actually want mostly the same things. We all want clean air and water. We all want billionaires to pay their fair share. We want every American to have a voice and a vote if they're a citizen, right? We want to address climate change. We want to address gun violence. We want these things in common. Americans want this. We want our kids to be safe. We want our kids to have a beautiful, hopeful future. We want LGBTQ people and trans people to be protected. It is a vanishingly slim minority who does not want those things. So my belief is that if we can keep reminding people, hey, I know you want to fight with that person because, you don't like me because I'm a liberal and I've got a trans kid, right? Sometimes I say this to people. I'm a lib. You want to hate me. Fine. For 1 second, take a break from the hate, which is just poisoning you, by the way. It's not hurting me. And look up at the people who have their shoes on both of our necks. And if we can join together in that fight, which is what Bernie has always urged us to do, AOC, so many others, we can win because the many is more powerful than the money. The many just has to stop fighting with each other. So I have hope that that's going to happen. And that is what keeps me hopeful today, Scott.
So my last question is always, can you give us some inspirational words? So you would have had an answer to that one.
I think I,
Awesome.
I think I did, right? I mean, was that okay?
Absolutely.
Does that
Oh,
fit the bill?
that wasn't. Everybody can tell it's not manufactured. That's amazing. It's truth. And or just to clarify, I do push progressive values on the people, and I do believe. I what I'm saying is what I don't like is when Democrats try and hide them or muddy them.
Right. Yes.
If you're pro-choice, own it and say, but we agree. Like exactly what you just said. You
Right.
said it
Yeah.
much better than my muddy way that I
Right.
said.
That makes more sense. And it is true. And again, pro choice is another one. Like Americans, 80% of Americans agree on that. Like it's just these people have a huge stake in making us hate each other.
Yeah.
And it would be so great if we could just finally stop. And, we can disagree on a lot of shit, but just start hating the billionaires. Because honestly, I'm getting into a real eat the rich mentality these days. It's frustrating. And yes, don't buy anything on February 28th, but I would urge people to go a step further. I think at this moment in time, we really need to consider real boycotts ongoing of things like Amazon. And I understand not everybody can do this, but those who can, Amazon and Elon Musk products for sure, and any sort of big corporate entity. Like we've got to make corporations realize that MAGA is not good for business. And so I hope, yeah, I think a national strike is necessary. I think a 1 day is a good first step, but like we've got to change our spending habits because I think capitalism is kind of how we got into this mess. And like what we're seeing are corporate overlords. We're seeing a CEO president take over. And none of us want that. again, I think most Americans agree we don't want CEOs running our country and profiting off of it. And that's what's happening right now. So anyway.
Want to say anything else? No.
No, I'm sorry. I'll stop right now. I know
No,
I've
no,
gone on too
no.
long.
I'm joking. It's wonderful to see you and keep up the great work. We're going to be able to do more of this as well. But it's just so y'all know, I've worked with unions for about 20 years now. I won't say anything about what they're thinking, but I will say that, were there to be a national strike, it would be a leverage point, I think, where the demand would be the removal of them from office. So I think that is, that I think there will be a point. I'm not saying that we're not there yet, but I'm saying that there will be something. Remember when Mueller was going to be fired and hundreds of thousands of people dumped into the streets, Times Square was full. Like, there's going to be some kind of energy, a breaking point where
Yeah.
he's gone too far, or people finally recognize he's gone too far.
Yeah.
And it'll be like, oh my God, like what, and I think that moment, it may be something that we don't expect, probably something random, but whatever works. But I think it's building up to that point with these protests and everything else. I think as long as we have wonderful patriots in this country, like Craven here, I appreciate you. And make sure that you subscribe if you haven't yet. I'll have it in the episode notes. I'll have subscribe all over it, and so that you can see everything that she's up to. I appreciate you taking the time. If you missed any of this chat today, I'll be posting it in full later this week in that as well. Don't forget to go on Twitter if you already have an account, still have an account, and use our hashtag Don't Cut Our Medicaid in regards to tomorrow's vote. So thank you so much for joining us. And that is a legendary speech, or however you want to paint it. What you just said there that is amazing. I'm going to cut that and send it to you as soon as possible.
Oh,
That
wow.
was
Okay.
amazing. Thank
Well,
you. No,
that's
I
very kind of
appreciate
you.
you.
Scott, I appreciate you too. Thanks for having me. And thanks to everybody who made comments. It was so great to, Blue Sky too, right? Should we do this on Blue Sky as well?
Oh yeah,
Do
yeah,
the,
yeah. No, we've been doing it on Blue Sky too. The
good.
the idea was to get on. We're also on X. I'm mentioning that because most people don't like that, and a
Okay.
lot, a lot of people have abandoned X. But we are trending top 10 on the platform right now. So we did infiltrate the beast, and we are talking about Medicaid. And there's a lot of people who were not on our side in the election who are on our side on this right now.
Yeah.
Um, so that's great news. But yes, absolutely on Blue Sky. I use Blue Sky and Substack more than any other platforms right now. So by
Great.
far, I'm
And
the
one
best.
last thing, if you call your Republican representatives and they say there's nothing in this that says we're going to cut Medicaid, ask them, how else are you going to get $880 billion out of the Energy and Finance Committee? Energy and Commerce Committee, rather. Ask them that. Then say, how are you going to pay? Where is that $880 billion coming from? They will not have an answer for you. But I'm told that they are saying that repeatedly. So make sure you go in armed with that response. Then where is that $880 billion going to come from? They can't answer. It can only come out of Medicaid. So just make sure you don't let them get away with that. Thanks, Scott. Thank you,
I
everybody.
appreciate you. Keep
So
on
good to see
pushing,
you.
y'all.
Yeah,
I
dude.
appreciate you.
And I appreciate
Um,
you.
Onward, y'all. Onward.
Onward.